This is Jordan Poyer, safety for the Buffalo Bills, and you are now listening to Cover One Buffalo Podcast. Let's go.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo Podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, and tonight I am joined by my partner in crime, the handsome, the delightful, the 13-3, Aaron and Quinn. Aaron, how are we doing?
MVP.
Oh, in just a half of football. And for anybody who's tracking it, Aaron Rodgers is doing okay. He's doing okay, about the same stat line.
He started pretty hot. I was a little worried. He started 10 for 10, I think, something like that. But he's cooled off since then.
Super similar stat line, 234 and 3 touchdowns, pretty much the same Josh did. It would have helped if he had like no touchdowns and 3 interceptions, but
Josh
pretty
did
sure.
it in a half, so.
Yeah, Josh did it in a half. So, welcome for everybody. I know we were going a little bit later today. That's intentional, so that by the end of the show, we know who the Bills' opponent is going to be. Right now, that is very much up in the air.
Yeah, tighter than I thought it would
about a half hour ago, I was pretty sure we knew who they were going to play, and right now, it is very much in the air.
Kick back and crack at Jumbos then.
Woo! Today's show is brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Uncle Jumbo's. We'll get into some of their fun segments later on with their responsible play and our West Her drive of the game. But you're joining today because you watched the Buffalo Bills decimate the Miami Dolphins 56-26. Aaron, that is our 6th straight game by double digits. That is our 3rd straight game by 29-plus points. ESPN Stats and Info put out a stat, and it was corroborated by Pro Football Reference. They're going into the playoffs the hottest of any team in 7 years, and they actually have done more than what the Seahawks did in that run going into the playoffs. It's unbelievable. This is the hottest team I ever remember playing. You know, I was a little older than you during the Super Bowl run, but I was still a kid. And this is right up there or surpassing a lot of it. We'll get into some of the records that were broken later, but we broke a lot of those records today as well. Just how does it feel to have such a carefree, casual second half in 3 straight games?
You mean to be right? How does it feel to be right? Fantastic.
Yes.
Feels really great. Our buddy, and I love him to death, Nate Geary, and I got into it a few weeks back, really at that Arizona game of this team can't pull away. And they hadn't really showed it too much, but the idea that they couldn't, I didn't find to really hold any truth. And when you look around the league, the way that they're playing, even some of these, 2-possession games, that doesn't happen league wide. You saw with the Steelers today, playing a number of their bench players, still went into a close game with a team that needed the win to get in the playoffs. The NFL is a tight league. So for some of these games that the Bills have played against better competition, I think a team like the Ravens, who all morning, all I heard about was how hot the Ravens are heading into the playoffs. And this team is the team to be, and they're getting hot at the right time. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, why aren't you guys talking about the Bills and what they've been able to do against better competition and really just destroying these guys along the way and playing complementary football? So for this team to be where they're at, it's something you and I talked ad nauseum, and I'm sure that people got sick of just like hearing about toxic differential. People got sick of hearing you and I talk about, hey, this team needs to be playing their best football all through the month of December and get hot going into the playoffs. Did either one of us think they'd be this hot heading through December into the playoffs? I can't look at anybody honestly and say I thought it would be this good. Yeah. But this is exactly what we wanted, and it lined up exactly what we've been talking about needed to happen for this team to do something special.
Absolutely. And let's go through a little bit of the game itself today, and then while we're talking through that, we'll know a little bit more about the outcomes of these games. Right now, Indianapolis is beating Jacksonville by 6, and the Texans are beating the Titans by 4. Both of those
converted a big 3rd and 5. So
there we go. So those both impact who the Bills could play. Right now, all 3 are still in play. The Bills could play the Titans, the Dolphins, or the Colts. It looked like it was locked up to be the Colts about a half hour ago, and now all 3 are firmly in play. We'll see where that goes as the show moves along. Man. Yeah, it's awesome. So today, we went in spending a lot of time. I certainly I was maybe hedged a little bit from where you were. You were pretty firmly in the case of don't play any of the starters at all, and I certainly understood it. I was a little bit more on the side of, hey, let them play a little bit. They certainly played more than I expected, but when they have the production they did today, and actually, let me step back for a minute. the number one goal from today's game was everyone came out of the game healthy. The only two guys we saw were Stephon Diggs and Taron Johnson. Both went back into the game and looked fine, having a great time on the sideline. The Bills came out of today. It looks like squeaky clean from a health standpoint. Everything looking great from that standpoint. So that was goal number one. Then winning and being able to lock up the number 2 seed was a bonus, but looking at the Steelers sitting guys and the Browns being able to beat them, that way I was certainly okay hedging. Josh Allen plays the first half and goes 18 of 25 for 72% completion percentage, 224 yards, 3 touchdowns, 9 yards per attempt. You know, when you add in Matt Barkley's numbers, which I think at minimum Josh could have matched, the Bills today threw for 377 yards and 4 touchdowns. You know, I don't love that there was 2 interceptions, but you know, one was a phenomenal play by Byron Jones. You can't fault that kind of athletic play. You know, and then Barkley was trying to go deep on a shot and got caught. Those things happen. They gave up 1 sack. It was a phenomenal day throwing the ball. And for Josh Allen to put that up in the first half against what was the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL coming in was pretty amazing.
Absolutely. I do think I still stand by the take that I had of resting starters. I was fine once kickoff happened, knowing that we were going to play them. Yeah. That was fine. I do think it went a little long, and we'll probably dive into that a little bit later. Yeah. I would say a lot of the fans that are going to come into my mentions and say, see, we were right, you can do it all and get everything you ever wanted, and it's a dream come true. The Bills started out a little slow.
Yeah.
And that
2 bad drives. Yeah,
2 bad drives. Josh got hit a couple of times. I didn't like him running on that one where he did freeze defenders and then ran.
Split between the 2. It looked cool, but I was screaming onto the internet of, don't run. Like, what are you doing?
With Diggs, like, even if you're sliding to protect yourself and some guy comes falling in, like, it's football, collisions are going to happen, things get twisted up. So that whole kind of section where the Bills are starting slow, I was getting real nervous. I was getting antsy to say, hey, man, get these guys out of here. You know, we're not getting the momentum maybe that we thought we would be out of this, and it's not going to plan. Just get them out of here and hope that Cleveland takes care of business. I was wrong in the sense that they were able to click. It looked like they were having fun out there. And I'm a big fan of momentum. So the fact that they were able to keep that offense clicking for an additional week, get live reps, and keep it going against what we've all been told for the last few months of football, that this is the best defense in the NFL. And the way they were able to move the ball up and down and really dominate them after the slow start, I'll take that momentum. I'll concede that to the people that said that matters. I'm all for that. So hindsight, it went fantastic. Everything checked all the boxes that everybody that was arguing about it wanted the boxes to be checked. I'm always going to hedge that health is more important than anything else, because Diggs goes down there. I guarantee you everybody was terrified about him having a concussion, being out. Like, this team doesn't move without Stephon Diggs, without Cole Beasley, without Josh Allen. Like, these things, we need all these guys to line up.
I joked about soiling my trousers. I'll pretend I was joking. It was, you know, it's the exact moment. I brought it up about when you're talking about Cole Beasley being in the game with Matt Barkley up 38-9 against the Patriots and then seeing him get hurt. It's terrifying. When I saw Taron Johnson laying on his back and had that stinger, and we didn't know if it was a stinger or a collarbone or a concussion. And, you know, thank the Lord, it was a stinger and he was back in the game and fine. But anytime those things happen, it just, you know, when John Feliciano got up a little bit slow on that one play, any of those things takes away from today. So one, you know, thank the good Lord, everybody came out of the day healthy. We're looking really, really good. And we were able to get many of those things. So in hindsight, those guys can dunk on me all they want. I'm super happy that it happened that way. I love being wrong about that. Heck, in my picks, I picked Miami to win because I thought it was going to be Matt Barkley and the practice squad. And I've never had a better time in my life being wrong. It was a delightful afternoon to watch myself being wrong.
But the Bills succeeding is the best form of wrong ever.
Oh yeah, it was delightful.
I will say this game was almost like the perfect way to end this Bills 2020 season. It was like the most 2020 Bills game we've had, where this team was just dominant in 3 phases of football, which we've seen for the last 2 months now, this team be complementary, dominant football. very lucky health. Like, that's what we've seen all throughout this year. They've had injuries, but nothing ended up being long term. Everybody came back here to finish up the season. This team having a lot of fun, really just taking it to a team that was a competitive team. Everybody says they don't have any signature wins or anything like that, but they've beat playoff teams the entire way here. So it felt almost poetic for them to cap off such a special season, to do it in the way that they did it, because it really kind of encapsulated everything that this team so far has been here in 2020.
Absolutely. So thank you to Jacques. And I know some people see these. We had some people ask about them. You can do a super chat in YouTube and be able to send us something as far as, either your contribution or to have your question written. We always answer all those questions. So anybody who wasn't sure what that is, thank you very much for your generosity, Jacques. We appreciate it. Cliff, one of our most consistent interactions online. We appreciate it. And he's right here. As an older guy, trust me, savor every second of this. We don't know if this is going to be a 1-year run or a 10-year run. I think it's going to take a while, and we're going to be good for a while, but you never know. We've had, like we just talked about, some fantastic injury luck this year. Enjoy every bit of this and savor it. So really well said by Cliff.
I mean, look at my dad's a Packer fan, and I think if you would ask Packer fans 10 years ago how many title shots Aaron Rodgers would have had in his career, they're desperate right now to get to a Super Bowl.
Or how many they'd get with 40 years of Favre and Rodgers, and then they'd walk away with, is it two total?
2 titles? Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is it really lines up special to make a run very infrequently. The Patriots are an anomaly. They're not the example of how NFL franchises operate. So I think the Bills have a shot to do something special. And for the fans that didn't necessarily have to suffer through the drought or weren't able to experience the 90s, like this is rare, and we should gloat and celebrate, but be happy that we have it and enjoy the moment.
So yeah, Travis's wife here saying his wife said she felt bad for the Dolphins. Those are the kind of feelings I need. That is what I need in my life, is people feeling bad for the Dolphins. So,
my wife was like cooking and prepping in the kitchen. Every time she'd pop in, she'd be like, "Oh my God, they scored again!"
Yeah. I had a couple of those comments today too. Yeah. Thank you so much, Chris. We appreciate it. And as we go through here, Eric, you're spot on, man. The question about that health and wellness facility and what they've done to be able to build that up, there's still luck involved. That facility does not stop ACLs from being torn. That does not stop bones from breaking. What it has shown is they have a fantastic ability to manage injuries as the season goes that might have been season ending or might have been longer term, and now they're able to band-aid that along. Last year, we saw 6 different guys have surgery right after the season, but they were able to keep it going as the season went. I have a feeling that's what we're seeing here, is that they're better at managing injuries and making it, tolerable as they go to be able to do it. So I think you're spot on. We're seeing benefits of it. It still takes a little bit of luck. Let's keep working through the game here. For the run game, I'm ready for the controversy that people are going to throw at me that Antonio Williams should be our running back 1. First off, I do think there's something to a guy who's been fresh and on the practice squad all season long, has none of the grind and the bumps and bruises that everybody else does.
For his one shot.
Yes, this is his one chance to get film. You get into a game late where the other team is ready to be off the field and losing by 20 or 30, and now you got this plucky rookie just coming at you full head of steam, ready to prove himself every single snap. I tweeted about it, and some of my family that are Dolphins fans, I said, this is the worst case scenario of a recipe for embarrassment, is, young, fresh, 0 miles on the tire, undrafted rookie trying to prove himself against a bunch of guys who are ready to get their bags packed and head to the Bahamas. It was terrible. So, one, good for him in that he looked phenomenal doing what he did. The rest of the run game was fine. We didn't get anything going. I'm glad that Moss and Singletary both got 3 carries each and didn't play the rest of the game. It was perfect. And great for Antonio Williams. I'm not ready to say that we found some diamond in the rough, but he looked good. And I certainly feel comfortable in him being the running back 3 next year versus TJ Yeldon. I think he looks like a guy worth a training camp spot and worth fighting for a roster spot. So that's nice to find something like that this late.
Yeah, I'm excited that he'll be a guy competing for a spot on this roster next year. He's been back and forth. I think it was almost starting to become a joke that he was on and off the practice squad all year.
He was that guy who got cut every time we added someone.
Yeah, and so good for him to be able to get some tape, because this is a weird year for those guys, right? I think if anyone in football got hurt the worst, it's those bubble guys that didn't get a preseason, didn't get a chance to stick on a roster or put film out there for other teams who might be able to pick them up if they stay on practice squad. So good for him. I'm excited if there's a full training camp next year in preseason, I think he'll be an interesting guy to take a look at. But as terms of like who's the future of the running back position for the next couple of years, I think it's pretty much solidified with Singletary and Moss, that the Bills are comfortable there.
Yeah, he's a nice luxury to have in that spot. I'm totally happy with it. But anybody who's going to try to say that maybe he should be our guy, you probably need to settle down a little bit.
Yeah.
Moving into the receiving core, I do think, although it's weird in a dominant game that we saw so much of, I think there were a couple spots where we missed Cole Beasley. There were a couple spots early on where we had to take some deep shots where it would have been nice to have that guy who could just find the spot in the zone to be able to go. And it's, it's something where I'm happy. As far as I've heard, I think we are going to see him next week. I've heard a couple rumblings of that I think he's in decent shape to be able to do that. But at minimum, I think we do see him again if the Bills are able to win next week without him. The rest of it, Stephon Diggs looked phenomenal again, 7 for 76 in the first half, and now is going to lead the NFL in every stat.
3 for 23 today.
Yep. So he's gonna end up winning the NFL catch and NFL receiving yards titles by 10 catches and 100+ yards. Just a phenomenal season. And then you go through, it was great to see John Brown back today and being able to go through. And I think at one point we had thought this was going to be deemed the Isaiah McKenzie game, and now Gabriel Davis tried to get in on some of that. So seeing so many guys have nice games was encouraging.
Yeah, it's still the Isaiah McKenzie game, in my opinion. Just it's super explosive. I wouldn't, for any fans that are expecting to see that become a thing.
our man Eric Buffwagon is one of our most loyal compadres and friends in the Cover One Slack channel and online. Just hit himself a nice 14 parlay. So congratulations and enjoy the profits.
Yeah, and this Titans are at the 1st and goal, like at the 4-yard line with 1:40 left. This is the longest 4-minute drive I've seen in a long time. They converted a few third downs here.
And the Colts did pull away. They have the ball up 28-14. So this is it. This is it right here. If the Titans convert and score a touchdown, the Bills will play the Colts. If they don't, the Bills will play the Titans. That looks pretty firm right now.
Go Titans. So where were we at? Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, right? You were talking about how Stephon Diggs is good at football.
Yeah, he's really good at football, man. And for anyone that wanted to argue what was the best trade, I think Hopkins was a great trade. Stephon Diggs was a great trade, and it worked out for the Vikings too.
Yeah, and I'm not mad at the Vikings being happy that they got a great rookie receiver. Good for you.
Yeah,
they'll watch us in the playoffs. Yeah, they'll watch us in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's changed everything. The confidence that he's instilled in this group, and you heard even going back to talking about Cole Beasley, the media talked to Isaiah McKenzie after this game because it was the Isaiah McKenzie game, and talked about the mentorship of a Cole Beasley and teaching him how to get open in the NFL. Like having these guys that, Josh Allen talked about his press conference. He talked about Stephon Diggs. He's never seen anybody that takes care of his body better. And
that's I liked hearing that comment.
Yeah, Eric has highlighted that in our Slack channel a number of times. You see him on Instagram doing acupuncture, doing massages, doing everything he can to maintain his body. We've heard about how he has a personal chef that cooks for him to keep everything up. All those things matter for everybody behind that guy too, because this is exactly what day one Sean McDermott came in here and everybody kind of misrepresented what he was talking about, the process and the culture that they're trying to build. It's the Monday through Saturday is what the process is. So when you get guys like a Cole Beasley, like a Stephon Diggs and a John Brown who do it all the right way all week long and can teach that, this is then what starts to build a farm system and starts to build that process throughout the building. Because if you're not doing the things the way they're doing, the ship's going forward with or without you. And so seeing a guy like Isaiah McKenzie, who we saw in the Bills behind the scenes thing a couple years ago, where Mike Hyde was telling him basically, you got to shut up if you want to make this team. Like, and to see him catch on with these other veteran professionals, and then him claim that the type of game he had today was reaping the benefits of listening to these guys and how to be a professional. That tells me all I need to know about the process and what they're doing in the locker room and behind the scenes for this team, and why we're seeing the success the way that we are.
Yeah, and you want to know what's even crazier? We saw this performance from the receiving core, and now we're going to add Cole Beasley and Kenny Stills. It's unbelievable the depth we're going to have. Touchdown.
No, it was almost an interception. Dropped, yeah. No, this game's killing me, man.
I think Tannehill just ran it in.
Okay, yeah. I'm behind then.
I just saw it. I saw it in the chat here, and I just saw it on the feed, so it does look like
almost pick. Okay.
Yeah, I do. I think the Bills are going to play the Colts now. We'll get to that here in a moment. But the fact that we saw Gabe Davis look great as a deep threat. John Brown come back at full speed, roasting a really good corner, and Xavier Howard on a double move for a touchdown. The best game of Isaiah McKenzie's career. And now we add back Cole Beasley and sign Kenny Stills. We're going to have 7 NFL caliber receivers, which is awesome because that allows us for bad luck. That allows us to survive a ding or somebody getting in a tough spot to be able to look at it. So it's going to be interesting to see how these things pan out, but super excited to be able to see this receiving core come together and to feel confident Josh is going to have a full complement of weapons through the playoffs here and however long we can take this run.
I think there's a good chance, like we talked about earlier in the week here, that I think they're going to sign Kenny Stills, but if Cole Beasley's back, there's a chance we never see Kenny Stills.
He may never be a game day active
year. And I don't need it. The way Gabe Davis is playing, the way the receiving core, what Isaiah McKenzie gives you when he's not need to be a wide receiver, that type of gadget play that he gives you, I don't need to see Kenny Stills if everyone's healthy. That's a great insurance policy. And I was on the phone with my dad talking about it. He's like, well, why are you signing a guy now? Like, dude, if you have a chance to load up on weapons on the best, most prolific passing offense in the NFL right now, you always do that. Why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah, there's a handful of things. One, it's rare to add a guy that good who asked for his release late in the season to catch on with a contender.
To do this, right. He's
come from 2 straight teams who run the Earhart-Perkins playbook. He's going to know He's going to know the terminology, the verbiage, the route tree. There's still going to be some nuances of the way that Daboll does it, but he knows the language. He speaks the language. He's coming in as a professional, and he's an insurance policy. He's there purely because, thank you so much, Lee. So generous. We appreciate you. Being so tapped into that, we're getting John Brown back off of injury. We're getting Cole Beasley back off of injury. We have no idea if somebody could get dinged up. And if you want to get really crazy with it, maybe Isaiah McKenzie gave you a chance today to play around with a Andre Roberts role in a roster spot and things like that. I'm not ready for that. I want Andre Roberts active in the playoffs. But next year, somebody brought it up to me. I've been saying all season, I want someone to be the Isaiah McKenzie and the Andre Roberts role all at once. Maybe if he's worked on his ball security, maybe he's ready to go for that role next year. And I'm certainly open to that because he'll be a restricted free agent for us next year. The final phase on offense here, the offensive line had a stellar game. The one play early on, you heard Deion Dawkins talk about it in the postgame presser. Weird miscommunication between him and Devin Singletary. They completely whiffed the defensive end coming through. Literally no one touched him. And Josh Allen got hit. Thankfully, nothing bad came of that. And we're in a decent spot to be able to, laugh about it now, but it ended up being one game or one sack for the day, and then gaining rushing yards when the opponent knew you were going to run the ball. You hear McDermott talk about it all the time. When you're able to run the ball when the other team knows you have to run, there's a certain dominance to that means a lot to an offensive line. And you could tell they cared about it, and the way Antonio Williams was running the ball, you could tell they loved it. And being able to do that was really exciting to be able to go through. So from an offensive standpoint, I thought it was a phenomenal performance when you consider the mixing and matching of personnel and depth, and overall was just a great play.
I did not like seeing Mitch Morse out there in the fourth quarter, even though he
We'll get to that in the. Matter of fact, why don't we switch right now to one of our sponsored segments? I think it's a great spot to talk about it here. Normally, we're going through the responsible play of the game, and I think you made a comment when I said earlier who I was going to pick, and that my comment was going to be my responsible play of the game was pulling the starters out. I'll even check myself a little bit in that they played guys more than I think they should. And 2, I didn't love that they only had 7 offensive linemen active. It certainly would have been easy to call up one of the practice squad guys. I thought you didn't really need Nate Becker. Like, I think you could have given a couple more reps to one of the other tight ends, and I would have much rather had an extra offensive lineman to give somebody else a blow from those starters to be able to go through versus rolling the dice. And 7 offensive linemen meant 3 starters had to play virtually the entire game. So that was a whiff in my mind, or an unnecessary risk, but I'd still appreciate the fact that they pulled everybody off and we got out of the game healthy. But I think it's fair to question if that was responsible enough.
I don't think it was, but again, to go back to my initial...
hindsight, we're happy that it worked out the way it did.
Yeah, I'm super happy everyone was healthy, but I don't know that there was a Bills fan in Bills Mafia that late into that second quarter, seeing Tremaine Edmonds out there, seeing Matt Milano out there, and then, into the second half, seeing some of these guys out there. And I get it. You can't... all your starters can't sit on the bench, but Micah Hyde was out there too long for my comfort, and these guys were still in collision. Once you're in an NFL football game, it's not like you can just really take it easy. We saw some of the receivers trying not to get hit, but you can't take it easy. You got to go out there and play the right way. And
the one way Stephon Diggs got hurt was sliding down and having a guy who was going for a regular tackle, not thinking, because I don't think Christian Wilkins was dirty on that play. He was chasing down a faster player and didn't realize, oh crap, he slid, and then ended up landing on top of him.
He's a big man who's just falling forward because physics is weird. But yeah, no, and even Taron Johnson's, I think 2 months ago, if you would have asked Bills Mafia if Taron Johnson goes down, do they care at the end of the season? But I think a lot of people were, not to the level of Stephon Diggs, but I think a lot of people were concerned when Taron Johnson went down, and people were mad at him, even though he didn't do anything wrong. Like, hey, what the hell are you doing getting hurt out there playing football? Like, that's part of the game.
Just how it works.
Ultimately, once I saw that they were going to have the starters out there, it's fine. Yep. Injuries are a part of football, and they got through the majority of the season without anything devastating. So I get the numbers are probably in favor of you getting out of that game mostly clean. But that little chance that something bad is going to happen, and the longer they were in there, the greater that chance becomes. Our friend Bruce talks about probabilities all the time, and I'm just seeing the longer these guys are in here, the more hits, the more plays. Something bad might happen, and I think they went a little too long. I think some guys, like you said, bring in more offensive linemen. There's no reason a veteran like Mitch Morris, who's had a concussion history, in my opinion, should be out there in a meaningless part of that game when your team's up 20, 30 points, still, playing his heart out and sending big blocks, because you lose a Mitch Morris, and I know they've patchworked the offensive line from time to time, but that's a sneaky big loss that I don't want to see heading into the playoffs. So I agree with you that pulling them and getting them out of the game was responsible, but I would have liked to see it a little bit sooner. My responsible play of the game is going to be the one that we've seemingly been picking all year long, which is Josh gets him to jump off sides again. It's a free play. Touchdown.
Probably the most egregious one he's had of literally talking to the referee during the play and be like, he was offsides? Okay. And then only looking into the end zone for the free shot. It was fantastic.
It was beautiful, and that play has succeeded. That type of responsible heady play has succeeded so many times this year. I can't believe teams are still doing it because Josh is looking for a free play. He's got a great cadence. He's getting guys to jump. Guys are trying to get a step on him. It's not working, and this was probably the best version of that play this year.
So the guys over at BSN, that's really generous. Wow. That's awesome, man. Thank you so much. That really means a lot. And, being able to go through and go through that kind of, the options that you have to be able to run, those kind of things is just the kind of thing that we joke about all the time. Like, oh man, I wish the Bills had a quarterback who would do those kind of things
for years.
And now having a guy that not only does he do it every single time, he gets mad when they don't let him. Like, he gets like literally upset when they don't let him take the free play and the shot down the field to be able to do it. So let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball. And this is one of those plays.
Houston's in field goal range.
Okay. All right. So it looks like we might go to overtime. Maybe we'll take us a little while to know who the opponent is here. We talk about all the time that sometimes stats lie. And when you look at a game where technically the box score is going to show you that Miami had more time of possession than we did, and we had 455 total yards and they had 454, today was as good of an example as possible of things like toxic differential and cashing in on big plays and being able to have all of those different elements to go through. I thought today was an exceptional defensive performance. They frustrated Tua the entire game, picked him off 3 times, and I counted 4 dropped interceptions. It could have been 7 interceptions on the day. Even maybe a 5th one later on. The Dean Marlowe almost had his 3rd, now that I'm thinking about it. And he could never get anything going. Later on, when they pulled everybody, they still had a physical freak like Devontae Parker out there making some big plays. That's fine. It is what it is. I thought the defensive performance today was great. It made me feel better about some of our backups like Tyler Medikevich and Dean Marlowe and AJ Epinesa, guys like that. It was a really encouraging performance from a depth standpoint to see so many contributors, even if it wasn't statistically the dominant game that it looked like watching it.
Yeah, and here's the thing when we talk about statistics and what statistics lie and which ones don't. Tua had 300 passing yards today, and this is my argument. I know people hate that I get on this argument all the time, but this is why it doesn't matter, because when you have a team that gets out ahead of you, then you have to pass to get back in the game. And they still had a number of toxic differential plays, but the Bills had more, and they couldn't catch up to the type of lead that the Bills got out to. So, yeah, when you just go and look at a box score and see numbers that, hey, they still scored so many points, they still threw the ball for so many, but they still got beat by, what was the final margin of victory? Yeah, 30. They still got beat by 30.
Yeah, they were up 37 at one point and won by 30.
Yeah, and a few of those, that one touchdown 2 or 3 was as garbage time as it gets. The one that it was Dane Jackson, Dean Marlowe in a soft coverage, they doesn't get more garbage time than that. So total dominant performance, really great to see, because these are good coaches on the other side. We talk about the coaching matchups that the Bills have gone up against Brian Flores and on the defensive side, and then Chan Gailey on the offensive side. Like, Chan Gailey hasn't had the greatest success in the world, but he's still a good offensive mind.
Yeah. And they were able to sorry, it moved right as I was clicking on it. But yeah, the normal Chan Gailey smoke and mirrors, their prettiest play was the one that Tua didn't even throw the ball, like you said. their prettiest ball of the day was thrown by Lee Bowden. So it was, holding him to a QBR of 23 and a quarterback rating of 62, yards per attempt of 6.2. That shows you how hollow those yards numbers were. It took him 50.
And doing it without Tre'Davious White, who's the best defender on this team still, and Jerry Hughes, who's by far the best pass rusher. I thought defensive line did a nice job. We didn't get the sacks in the same way, but there was a number of pressures, and they were into his face throughout that game, making him uncomfortable. And all of that type of depth that we saw guys like Mike Love making plays, who we haven't seen all year long, but making plays in the backfield. Epinesa looks really nice coming off the ball. Like, seeing the depth in a game like this still be dominant, and into the third and fourth quarters, you're seeing Dean Marlowe's of the world's, Jaquan Johnson's, like people, Dane Jackson having a nice game. Like, there was jokes, I think it was jokes, but people talking about Medikevich earning some play. Like, people were just playing well. You're seeing the depth, know the scheme, come in and be able to play. That's a great sign if somebody does go down. I don't want anyone to go down, but it's a great sign that you can still play this type of dominant football against the playoff competitive, like this team, depending what happened today, they could be in the playoffs. Like, this is a really good sign for the depth in the future of that defense.
Absolutely. And you talk about, I think while you were talking, the Titans did something ridiculous because the chat just exploded with just OMG.
A lot of head slapping over on the game right now.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what happened, but everybody lost their minds.
Bomb. Oh my God, that's a bomb.
To AJ Brown?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
we're back in field goal range.
Yeah. Apparently they didn't go to overtime. The
witching hour, man.
Oh, it's unbelievable. So, and again, the same way I talked about Antonio Williams and Isaiah McKenzie, some of those guys, having good, solid reps from Tyler Matakevich is nice. Having good reps from Dane Jackson is nice. Having good reps from Mike Love is nice. Like, those are things that are just luxuries when you get into the second half here, and being able to understand how those things are going to, pan out. You don't know where injuries could come from or different things could happen, but all of a sudden you have a chance to now have a fill-in that has some real reps to be able to go through. That's incredibly valuable to do. So it's something where, we'll go through some of the other pieces here, but before we get into the record book, which I do want to talk through, is all the records that were broken today. I want to talk about special teams for a second. Corey Bojorquez had the greatest punt I've ever seen in a game. I don't mean that in any, exaggeration or hyperbolic way.
Right.
I'm dead serious. Being able to punt a ball from 55 yards away to go out of bounds at the 6-inch line is the best possible punt you can have. Like, I know there's records of guys kicking at 90 yards with crazy bounces and wind and stuff like that. That's the best punt I've ever seen. It was absolutely perfect in every way. You can't even do that stuff on video games. They have it go out exactly at the 6-inch line. Then he did it again later on, angling the ball out of bounds at the 11-yard line. His other ball actually checked up at the 1 and did bounce into the end zone, but that was a 57-yarder that he kicked there. So even with the one that went out of bounds was actually only 57 yards, he uncorked a 69-yarder later. So he ended up with 4 punts for 214 yards, averaging 53.5 per kick, and only gave up 12 yards return, so over 50.5 net yards per attempt. He's going to end up leading the NFL in gross yardage, and then by my calculation going to be somewhere in the top 5 for net average on the season. And having his best game of the season at this point going in is another valuable thing, because we're only going to play better teams as we go. We're not all of a sudden going to turn into some ground and pound team, but we're not going to score every possession. It's important to be able to flip the field when you want to be able to go through, and understanding that we now have a weapon like that is awesome. Tyler Bass broke the record. We'll get into some of those here in a moment, with 8 extra points in a game. So having 8 extra points was enough for him to break the season record for scoring. And for where I know you and I tried to calm people down and wait, but both were a little anxious. Having a guy who goes from, hey, do we need to call Steven Hauschka, to breaking the team record in points scored and not missing a kick for the last 2/3 of the season is pretty incredible.
Yeah. No, it is. And this is going to sound really stupid, but I'm not scared. I'm dumb all the time. The only thing I'd like to have seen for Tyler, we talk about ending the season on a high note, is I would like to see more trying field goals for Tyler Bass going in.
We scored too many touchdowns.
Too good. They were scoring too many touchdowns where he was just really lining up for extra points over the last month. We didn't see a lot of field goal opportunities for him. But no, I agree. I think everybody's going in hot, playing at the right time. And we were talking about this a little bit offline here. Obviously, everybody in the chat knows, but Tennessee did just win on that field goal, and it doinked a little bit. I'm telling you, man, this league.
Gaskowski almost
gave up inches. These cliches of football are cliches because they're so true. But yeah, no, we were talking offline before going on here, because we record the toxic differential plays, that I almost wanted to put Bojo's punt as a toxic differential play, because when you have a guy that can swap the field like that, because then they go 3 and out and the Bills get it at the 46?
Yeah. Well, if you go an average, let's say an average situation there, we ended up getting 57 yards of net field position. The average punt is 45 yards. The average return is 9 yards. Right. So the average net is closer to 36. So he got us an extra 21 yards. I think in our equation, he does. Like, that is a toxic differential. If you get 20-plus differential on any play of what the average normal outcome is, that's why we're measuring those things. It was unbelievable.
And in the game against Miami, we're crushing them. It doesn't matter all that much. It's fun and it's it's exciting. Yeah. But where this type of stuff is going to matter, and this is why I'm so hot on this Bills team right now, is the playing all three phases and the coaching, like all these little details matter so much more in this new season, because all this stuff we've done all throughout the season has been fantastic. All these records are fun. All that's super cool. I'm happy. It's fun to celebrate. I'm buying all the t-shirts I can find about the Bills, but it's all over now. Yeah. These other games are ending. We're into a new season, but taking that momentum of what they've been able to build on is going to matter big time. Bojo not being the inconsistent Bojo that we've seen throughout the years here. Tyler Bass not being an inconsistent Stephen Hauschka that we saw last year. Every little advantage we just saw in this game here, the doink kick to win it, like this stuff all adds
giving up a big play late in the game when you needed to have good coverage.
It all matters, and that's going to be the difference of whether the Bills can capitalize on the momentum they had at the end of the season and make a significant run and being a one and done type of team.
And one final piece on special teams, obviously kudos to Isaiah McKenzie. He looked clean handling all three kicks that he had. He had 2 kick returns and 1 punt return, looked clean fielding all of them, and obviously took the 1 punt to the house for 84 yards. For anyone who, obviously I got multiple tweets when that happened about needing to cut Andre Roberts. It's never been an issue of talent. We know Andre Roberts, or we know that Isaiah McKenzie is talented when he gets the ball in his hand. The challenge is he had a really poor season. Bruce Nolan put this out there during the game. The reason we signed Andre Roberts is because Isaiah McKenzie was that bad in the 2018 season.
We're sending Mike a hideout there because he could just catch it.
Yes, we had concern about him fielding punts. So I'm very open to watching him training camp next year, and maybe he's ready to have matured and built that skill set. But good for him. Today was great for him mentally to have that, and that's a nice feeling going into the playoffs, although I do expect Andre Roberts to be back out there in all phases of returns in the playoffs.
I agree, but in case something happens to Roberts, It's good to know you have that guy in your back pocket. And McKenzie has a role on this team, whether or not Roberts is here, and it's a very important role. But I don't know that his game today, while it was great and fun, and I'm happy for him, and maybe he can build on that foundation, like you said, in the summer, I don't know that it isn't necessarily an indicator that we're able to move on from Roberts yet. I'm open to them competing for that, but don't be fooled that because Andre Roberts hasn't had a touchdown return that he hasn't been one of the best punt returners since he arrived in Buffalo. Before he arrived, he was still one of the best, and since he's been here, he's been one of the best on average. He's probably an all-pro punt returner. Cordell Patterson's probably the only other person that's any better than him in the NFL. So his averages are better. He's a safer returner. He's a great addition to this team. I agree with. I'm on camp with you, where if we can get a guy that does the Isaiah McKenzie things and the Andre Robert things, that's fantastic. But the game today doesn't mean that's what we have.
Yeah. So it's something that I think it's a good problem to have, and I'm excited for him. I'm glad for him. Looking at the drive of the game, I thought that there were several options. I think that if I'm gonna put any of them together, I think early on when it was still a bit of a game, the Bills had scored, they went back to Miami got a punt back, and Buffalo answered with an 88-yard drive and the free play touchdown at the end. I'll call that the drive of the game because it kind of put it out of reach. Right after that was the 3-and-out where McKenzie took the punt back for a touchdown, 21-3, and then it was just the floodgates opened. It was never a game beyond there. That was critical because up 7-3, Miami knowing they need to stop you and knowing that this could be Josh's last drive of the game at any point, and you're going to get the backups in there. Miami's going all out, doing everything they could, and Buffalo went down the field just imposing their will on them, and I thought that was a great showing.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good one. I think the only other one I would say is the first one because it was Josh Allen's record-breaking drive, and it got points on the board. They were off to such a slow start. My concern was that how long were they going to play the starters? Were they only going to put them out there for a few drives? And if they didn't score on that drive, were they going to just say, all right, today is a wrap. Let's get everybody else out there and get out of this game.
McDermott saying
being able to get any points was huge.
Oh, yeah. McDermott saying he was doing it by feel, I think, speaks to that. I don't think he had a set number of plays or time going in, just parameters. And I think that they weren't quite sure. And then you could tell at one point, I saw some interaction with Josh on the sideline that I think they told him that he would get the first half at some point, because you could see him kind of lobbying a couple of times and telling Barkley to sit down. And you saw Barkley warming up a couple of times as Josh went back out there. So I think they were messing around a little bit. And obviously he kept putting up scores as they went. And if not for as phenomenal of a punt as what it was, they got a really lucky bounce at the end of the first half. They were punting from their own 30, and it was going to check up at like the Bills 35, and it got like a 20-yard bounce that took up about 5 more seconds and lost them 20 more yards of bounce. If they end up with the ball at their 35 with 2 timeouts and 35 seconds left, I think they try for another field goal in the first half and tried for 31-6 with Josh, because I think he was ready to do it.
Yeah.
All right, so switching over here before we go into the playoff talk, I do want to just give a little bit of time to be able to talk about the records that were broken today. So just going through some fun ones. We already mentioned the Tyler Bass scoring record. He broke the record for the most points scored by a Buffalo Bill in a season, broke Steve Christie's record. And being able to go through, Josh broke virtually every passing record in the books. He now has most completions, highest completion percentage, most passing yards, most total yards, most passing touchdowns, and most total touchdowns. Then you go into a combination of Stephon Diggs. He breaks virtually every receiving record in the books. He has most receiving yards, most receptions. He did not break the receiving touchdowns record, but most receptions, most receiving yards. Then you go into a matter of the overall team record. So the Bills broke their record for most points scored in a season, 501 points scored on the year, which is an average of 31.3. At one point today, they actually had the record, or the most points scored in the season. It actually did get caught a little bit towards the end. The Packers ended up passing them by 8 points, but they're going to end the year with the second most points scored and only one of 2 teams to be able to score 500 plus points. And the record, the Bills have never scored 500 points. That's actually almost 43 points more than the Bills had ever scored before. Their previous record was 458 points. So the Bills had never averaged 30 points a game. They had never scored over 500 points. And they did that by equaling the last team that had the scoring record, also went 13-3. This was the third time in league history, or in team history, that we had 13 wins in a season. So most wins in a season, most points scored in a season, every passing record, every receiving record, and the scoring record. It's a pretty good run.
I'm drinking too much Uncle Jumbo's. Oh, I drank too much Uncle Jumbo's and had to go pee here mid-show. Yeah, I mean, here's my thing. It was fantastic that they broke all these records. It's modern NFL. It's a shame that it took getting a team this long into the modern NFL to really even challenge a lot of these records, right? Because it's been just so bad for so many years that you're trying to tell me between Drew Bledsoe to Josh Allen, we couldn't have somebody even really get close to challenging any of this stuff. So it's great. I'm happy for it. I'm happy that it happened to this team. This is, I think, a special unit. I think these are special players. Josh Allen's going to be here a long time. I expect him to continue to shatter career records for the Bills, but that's just the way this NFL is. That the way the game's set up for the type of explosive offense that you're going to see most of these records. That doesn't take away from the way they scored points this year on some good defenses. But this is the kind of thing I expect when you have a good team in modern NFL, for them to come in and break all those records when guys weren't throwing nearly the way they were. Now it's 30 years ago almost. So this is a good thing that they broke those records, but it should be expected.
Well, and then you go through and the idea of, 6 straight wins by double digits, 3 straight wins by 4 touchdowns, plus just the kind of dominance they're showing late in the year has been incredible.
Yeah.
We've now come to the time of the show to talk about the playoffs. So
playoffs.
It is unbelievable that it panned out the way that it did. I'm going to say this was up there in my top 1 or 2 possible scenarios of how things were going to pan out. The Buffalo Bills have locked up the number 2 seed. Next week, we will find out tonight. We don't know when as of right now. If this happens during the show, please let us know if anyone sees any announcements or some Schefter bombs. The Buffalo Bills are going to host the Indianapolis Colts next weekend. We don't know exactly when that's going to be. From a matchup standpoint, the other game I'm going to talk about here is probably going to get the prime billing. The 4-5 matchup, and the team that Kansas City will be awaiting the winner of, will be the Tennessee Titans hosting the Baltimore Ravens. So as of right now, the Ravens and Titans are on the other side of the bracket to play the winner of that game playing the Chiefs. And if the Steelers beat the Browns at home with all their starters returning back, the Bills will play the winner of that game. If the Browns upset the Steelers, the Bills would play the winner of the 4-5 matchup between Tennessee and Baltimore, and the Browns would go to Kansas City. So next week, you guys should want to be Steelers fans, rooting for the Steelers to win, because I certainly would rather play them than the winner of Tennessee-Baltimore, and I like the idea of Kansas City having to play the winner of Tennessee-Baltimore. So the Bills will play the Indianapolis Colts at home and then wait for, hopefully, the Steelers to come to them with the winner of Tennessee and Baltimore going to Kansas City. If you gave me a chalkboard coming into today and asked me to line out how I wanted the playoffs to line up, it would look an awful lot like this.
I have been on record of I don't care who we play. I think all these teams present different challenges to the Bills, and I think they all belong in the playoffs. The AFC stacked this year. Don't make any buts about it. This is a stacked playoffs if I've ever seen one. Every team deserves it. Where once in a while you'll get a team that probably, we're just seeing it in the NFC. You're going to get a 7-win team that sneaks into the playoffs.
No bad teams are in the AFC.
No, there isn't. And they're all tough matchups. Are there matchups that are maybe more favorable? Sure. Is playing against Phillip Rivers, who's not the Phillip Rivers he used to be, a favorable thing? Can you make that team one-dimensional? Sure. But that
their offensive line, Naheem Hines and Jonathan Taylor, that's legit.
They're built for playoff football in that way. And they're really good at what they do. This is a super consistent Colts team. I think people are just seeing them, and you probably haven't seen a lot of Colts football this year because they're not a primetime team. Yeah. They're not a pretty team that is putting up points in the way the Bills are, but they can limit some of what the Bills want to do. This is a good team that's well-rounded. They play all 3 phases too. All these teams, I don't think there's an easy out in the playoffs. So when people are trying to say, hey, we want to get this team, I don't think any of these guys are easy out, and I think this is going to be a really interesting playoffs. And it doesn't matter. Again, they say it all the time. Coaches say it doesn't matter what you did in the regular season. This is a new season that we're starting over here, and everything begins here forward. And if the Bills are going to be real good and have a run, it's going to be another month of football that they have to beat great teams.
Yeah. I think, when you're stacking it up coming into the day, we could have played Miami. Obviously, that looks like that would have been lovely to play Miami again. But beyond there, I think that Cleveland, Tennessee, Indy are all pretty similar. Good running attacks with some play action ability down the line, some good offensive lines, varying degrees of defense. So the Titans had the best offense of that group, but the worst defense. The Colts probably have the lesser of the offenses with probably the better defense. DeForest Buckner is a problem. We'll get into that during the week. They have some talent at all 3 levels. Darius Leonard's a great linebacker. They have some talent in the secondary, all kinds of different things to be able to go through. It was a, exciting way to be able to go through, this kind of these options to be able to be there. But the Colts are as good as the rest of those teams, but someone that I'm comfortable the Bills can beat and be able to go through there. We'll get into that during the week and target out some friends who can come on the show and talk to us about this preview here. But being able to set up the way that it did, the Dolphins end up getting eliminated from the playoffs by the Bills. The Bills swept the division for the first time in team history. The Bills had never gone 6-0 in the division in team history, and having it pan out with this playoff scenario, I think is pretty special.
Yeah, I think somebody mentioned it in the chat, but it seemed a little weird to me over the last 2 weeks. There seemed to be within the media people trying to make a case for Flores to be coach of the year. And I love Brian Flores. I love what they're doing over there. But I think Sean McDermott killed any concept of that being a thing. You don't go into a game like this that matters so much for your team and have your team play so flat against a division rival, and it ends up kicking you out of the playoffs where you can then also still be coach of the year. I don't think that world exists for me. I'm excited to talk about this Colts matchup. I think probably the one concern, and we'll get into it this week, that probably all the Bills Mafia has with this defense is the run game. And you have a lot of teams in this playoffs that can beat you. Anything, and it's their ability to get those big toxic runs to really keep Josh Allen off the field with the run game and control the game and keep him on the sideline. That's the way to beat this Bills team, which is crazy to say, is to control them and control them on the ground, where I think they're better than a lot of people think, but it's still the probably biggest weakness out there is the run game. So control that and keep Josh Allen off the field. And they're not the only team that can do it, though. So it's not like this is by far a tough matchup on the ground, because a lot of these teams, if we had to play Tennessee, that's their bread and butter, is keeping Josh Allen off the field with that run game and play action. So you're getting it no matter who you play against. So the challenge is pretty similar across the board here in the AFC outside of Kansas City.
Yeah, Azor here asking about the Colts secondary.
From Rock Ya-Sin.
I would say Rock Ya-Sin's good. Xavier Rhodes has had a nice comeback. He signed with them from Minnesota. Kenny Moore has been really good out of the nickel. Kari Willis has had some moments for them. I would say there's no rock stars in their secondary.
There's no secondary in the NFL that can...
Correct.
If Josh is on...
There's nobody who can cover Stephon Diggs in man. There's nobody who can move quickly enough to cover Cole Beasley in zone. Plus, we have John Brown, Gabe Davis.
Today. Yeah.
So they have a talented secondary. It's more going to be, does DeForest Buckner and Justin Houston take over the game? That's what it would take for the, if you're looking for a recipe for a Bills upset, it's going to be defensive linemen who can take over the game and get to Josh before he can make a play, opportunistic players in the secondary who can get turnovers, and then a run game who can lean on a positive game script and keep the Bills offense off the field because they're going on 12 and 15 play drives. That's what it's going to take, other than a shootout with the Chiefs. For any other team, that's what it's going to take to be able to do that. They have the pieces to do that. I think that the Bills are going to end up being 5+, maybe 7-point favorites against the Colts. It's going to be that ballpark, somewhere between 4 and 7. And I think that's right. I think that the Bills should be favored, and I think they should win this game, but they have talent. There's a reason they're making the playoffs. There's a reason they won 11 games. They're a good team here. Their secondary is not good enough to keep up with our team. If they win this game, it would be they pulled the upset because their defensive line took over.
Yeah, I recall if we get some sugar high Josh. That's
correct.
Still my fear. He had a great regular season. I'm super happy. There are going to be fans at this game. We've talked about that on the show. Does that matter? Getting him too hyped up? We'll find out a little bit. I don't think the fans are going to make a massive impact. I don't think there's that many fans if he gets hyped up over this, we're in big trouble once fans come pouring back into the stadium. But I'm still worried about, now this is a new stage, a national stage level that's not Monday Night Football during the regular season. We've seen many teams. Peyton Manning for years was great in the regular season and had great regular season teams. Those teams fell flat in the playoffs. It doesn't mean that they were one and done and lost to a team like they should be in the Colts. But still, I think we need to wait and see who is playoff Josh Allen, because that's something we don't know yet. And there's a lot of young guys on this team that we don't know how they're going to step up to the level of play in the playoffs, because we saw last year they had a chance to take that game away. They didn't do it. And I know Josh has grown a lot since that loss, but really the answer is going to be whatever Saturday or Sunday when they play the Colts is, what did he really learn against the Texans? Because again, it doesn't really matter what happened here this regular season. That's great. Got a lot of stats, broke a lot of records. Now you need to go out and beat a good team in the playoffs in your building, because that was the standard you and I talked about. Yep. This is where the season would be judged right here. Can they win the division, get a home playoff game? Most importantly, win that game. I think they can go beyond that, but it starts with winning this game. If they can win this game, then no matter what happens beyond that, this season is exactly what they set out to be and is a success, in my opinion.
Absolutely. You're spot on. It's, all the things that we laid out going into the year. I think it's fair that the expectations have raised as we've gone along, and that now I've gone from, at first it was winning the division, hosting a home playoff game, winning a playoff game. That was a successful season. I'd like more than that now. I'd like multiple wins. I think that it's fair to say we should make the AFC Championship game. I think that's fair. The Chiefs are the number 1 seed for a reason. Anyone who has watched football the last 6 games, if you try to tell me that the Chiefs are just flat out better than the Bills, you're wrong. They're not. Now, are you going to tell me that you think their ceiling is higher, they have more playoff experience, they can flip the switch and turn on those performances? Sure. They still have unbelievable talent, unbelievable coaching, and went 14-2. So they're phenomenal. But the Bills are playing better than them right now and are as good as them. They can, if the Bills play their A game, they can beat the Chiefs flat out. So anybody else, I've now raised that expectation. I now think the Bills should win multiple playoff games. They should go to the AFC Championship game. That's the kind of performance that I want to see, and it's awesome to be able to feel like that's attainable now.
I agree. My personal expectations have raised, but if they do come out and this just is some type of bad matchup and things don't go their way and they lose a close game, that's a failure. If they win this game and then lose to a really good team,
sure,
it's a failure in the eyes that, hey, we had a real great chance with this team. The way they went into the playoffs, we'll probably never capture that type of magic again. Maybe they had a chance to do something special and could have gone further, but winning a playoff game is still sort of the step in the process. And we've seen really good teams take sort of those incremental steps along the way of getting to the ultimate goal. We've seen it across sports where you kind of take a step further and further each year. So I just want to I'm talking this out really to curb my own psyche going into this, that ultimately they just got to take care of business. And it's been the same way all year long. 1 week at a time, take care of business. I don't think they're going to get into any of the hype surrounding this team. I think that's part of this process too, and what Sean McDermott's built for a culture is they're going to be totally focused on the Colts this week. I don't think they're going to buy into that they're the best team to knock off the Chiefs. That talk's been coming up here for the last few weeks. That's the type of things that can send a team a little bit off the rails. I think we saw a great season out of the Baltimore Ravens a year ago, and they
when that came up, when the comment was being asked about, hey, who is the last team to win 3 straight games by 4 touchdowns plus, it was the Ravens last year. They had a 3-game run where they won 3 by 28 plus. It wasn't going into the playoffs like the Bills are, but that tells you how good of a team they were last year and how dominant their point differential was last year. And they lost their first playoff game. Like, it just doesn't. You still have to prove it in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's a whole new season, and these are good teams. So I'm excited to see what type of run they can make, but it all starts on whatever day it's going to be, Saturday or Sunday. It starts there, and I can't wait to see how this shakes out.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Mac, there's a couple different questions here asking about Kenny Stills. We spoke about it earlier in the show that he comes in with a knowledge of the system, but he is going to take time to get up here. And if John Brown and Cole Beasley are both active, I don't expect him to be active in his first game. If Cole Beasley's not ready to be back, maybe they put him in there. I'm not really sure. With how well Isaiah McKenzie and Gabe Davis played today, I'm going to find it hard-pressed to see that Kenny Stills is going to be active in his first game with the Bills, but we'll see where that goes and where they come from.
With all these COVID policies, he could sign tomorrow, or Correct. Is it Tuesday?
I'm not 100%. I think it's tomorrow, but it might be Tuesday. Depending, it depends on
if it's Tuesday and this game's on Saturday. I can't see him coming and playing, especially like you said with how well McKenzie and Davis played here this week. I think it would be more of insurance there, but I guess if he signed tomorrow and the Cole
had the full week to go,
I'm sending out nothing but positive vibes that Cole Beasley is going to be just beautiful, long locks, ready to play whatever day we're going to play football.
So Michael patiently asking, I think 6 times, what are your opinions on our star new running back? So we did touch on that earlier. Really happy for Antonio Williams. He'll go back to the practice squad, and it's nice to see. I'm excited to see him compete for TJ Yeldon's spot next year.
Yeah, I agree.
So going through the other pieces here, got a couple other ones. who would be the better quarterback for Indy, Phillip Rivers or Frank Reich. I think they'd be pretty similar. Both of them kind of just fling it sidearm to get the ball out there.
Yeah, and Rivers' arm, man, it's been weird. Like there's been some games where I've watched him and he's just flopping some ducks around where his arm just looks totally
He
dead.
hit a couple nice deep balls today.
He had some nice deep balls today, and the thing that's annoying about Phillip Rivers is he's so tough to sack. Yeah. He's super smart, and the Bills have struggled with quarterbacks like that are able to get the ball out quick. You can get pressure on them, but you can't quite hit them.
Yeah.
There's going to be an annoying amount of them being able to move the ball in some situations where the Bills are. Jerry Hughes is almost there for the sack, and he just gets it out, checks it down to Taylor, and Taylor takes it 10, 15 yards. Like, that's the kind of annoying offense they are. He's gonna make some throws though where it's just a duck over the middle that Jordan Poyer and Micah Hatt are going to be able to possibly get their hands on. So at this point in his career, it feels very similar to the downfall of Big Ben. In having watched him this year, but he's there every once in a while. He's got enough in that tank where he still zips one in there, man.
Yeah. A lot of these questions, Justin, Josh Norman or Dane Jackson with your back against the wall. My answer is still Josh Norman. Although
Norman had a really nice game today.
Yeah, he had a pick six. There was a couple really nice pirouetting sideline throws or catches from Devontae Parker. Like, everyone can give those up. He's a phenomenal athlete. That wasn't him having bad coverage or getting roasted or getting picked on or anything silly like that. Although I will say, Dane Jackson probably gives me the confidence that we don't need to re-sign Josh Norman next year, that we can probably let him go and let the competition be Dane Jackson and Levi Wallace next year and a new draft pick or a draft pick added in there. So I do see potential in Dane Jackson. I'm not ready to turn the keys over to him in a playoff run just to find out if he can keep up for an entire game. I'm excited about his potential, and that's awesome to have that luxury.
Yeah, and I'm happy for him the way he came out and played today. I love the way he hits the run fits. I think that's great. The team was really rallying behind him. You saw every time he was able to make some type of play, guys just swarmed to him to encourage that. So this was an opportunity that the team didn't get with preseason for a lot of those guys to get out there and get their feet wet. Again, fans have been clamoring for Dane Jackson, and I think he did a good job with his reps, but that doesn't mean anything changes from this point going forward in the season. This defense is just getting good. I don't know. Me personally, I don't want to change a thing. I want them to stay as consistent as a unit as they've been. I wouldn't mind him being an active member of this roster. I'm not saying that. I think he's a nice depth player, but I think both Norman and Levi Wallace are still ahead of him going forward here, and then he gets a chance to compete.
Yeah. When's the last time you had to pump the brakes?
I pump the brakes all the time. Man, no, I don't know. Well, I mean, not that long ago with Levi, having to pump the brakes on Levi not that long ago, a month ago, maybe. It's been about a month since I pumped the brakes.
Since a solid brake pumping. Yeah. So as we're going through, Matt is asking about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. My understanding is there's a hope he can come back, but there is not any assurance that he's going to come back this season at all. It looked like a pretty serious injury. They thought they could hold off surgery, but a lot of the comments were that he was going to require surgery in the offseason, regardless of when it happened. So I don't know that there's any assurance that Clyde Edwards-Helaire comes back, but Darwin Thompson and Darrell Williams and Le'Veon Bell looked fine too. So
Andy Reid can scheme up great running back plays.
Yeah. How good Kansas City's running back is not going to be the reason we win or lose that game. It's going to be who plays better from Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen.
Right.
So Cliff asking here about no injuries. I'm not aware of any. So we saw Taron Johnson get dinged up. We saw Stephon Diggs get dinged up. We saw John Feliciano get up slowly on one play. Those are the only three that stuck out to me. We'll wait to see the reporting on that. I'm not aware of anything else from the Bills from an injury standpoint.
Can you imagine being a Bucs fan today? Seeing that was my biggest fear is you get that personal record stat, that's great, and then you get a no contact injury heading into the playoffs. That ruins it for you.
Yeah, so for anyone who's not aware, Mike Evans had a really awkward slide in the end zone that his knee buckled. I will say Bruce Arians after the game said they think they avoided a major injury, but for him to just be good to go a week from now, they have a game in possibly 6 days. They have a game. That's tough. Tony asking here, when do we find out whether the game is on Saturday or Sunday? Literally any second. Like, so that tweet could come through any moment. We will know tonight. We will know the playoff schedule tonight. It's possible we may not know until after Sunday Night Football, but I have a feeling some things will leak ahead of time now that they know. They still know that it's going to be either Washington or the Giants hosting Tampa Bay. So that's still the same travel, the same idea, the same general market. The Washington and New York City markets are pretty similar, plus it's Tom Brady. So they already know what they're getting in that game. I have a feeling we'll know tonight, this evening, anytime in the next couple hours, we're going to know that game. But it might not be until later tonight.
Stop yelling at us. And no, it wasn't. Injury fear was not unwarranted. Hindsight doesn't mean that whatever your opinion is before that was not warranted. I think injuries are super warranted.
Unless you can tell me you didn't care when you saw Stephon Diggs slowly on the ground not being able to get up. You could tell me that didn't bother you.
You might be being sarcastic, Thomasburg, so I'm going to assume you were there. But yeah, no, I mean, and Sear Neal, somebody brought it up. I think Nicholas Law asked about Sear Neal. He got hurt for a minute, and he's not a contributor in the sense that he's going to miss snaps on the defensive side, but he's one of the best special teams gunners and coverage guys that they've had this year, and he's a huge part of the success they've had on special teams. I don't want to lose him either. I don't know what his status was. I saw him on the bench towards the end of the game. It did not look like he was a serious injury where he had to leave the game, totally leave or anything, but you don't want to lose any of these guys at this point.
Yeah. Trent Murphy or AJ Epinesa inactive next week. AJ Epinesa is the superior football player now.
Yeah,
like he just
Murphy's done. Yeah, Murphy's done for the year. Even in this game, I love Murphy. Even in this game, he had a chance to make plays when all the practice squad guys were making plays. He didn't do anything. Yeah. But he's a big part of, again, we talk about Cole Beasley's development, or Cole Beasley helping Isaiah McKenzie develop. Yeah. We heard AJ Epinesa talk about Trent Murphy helping him to be a pro, eating the right way, doing the things the right way. And this is what I say to people all the time. Like, that locker room presence, Brandon Beane will happily overpay for leaders in the locker room. We've seen it time and time again, and fans hate it. They don't hate it. The Bills don't hate it. Would they like Trent Murphy to be a super productive player? Absolutely. Yeah. Are they happy with him grooming the next good defensive lineman for this team? Absolutely. They love that leadership. So, yes, he has not worked out on the field, but I think ultimately they're fine with having had paid Trent Murphy and had him on this team.
Yeah, in hindsight, I still would like that $8 million back now, having seen what we've seen. Sure. But not knowing that AJ Epinesa was ready to make that leap, you couldn't have just rolled the dice there and not had that extra defensive end to go through there. So in hindsight, sure, I would have rather had that money back.
Undefeated in the whole history of the world.
Hindsight, I always know what people should have done. Joseph asking the over-under for the wildcard game next week. So you're now taking two polar opposite teams. The Colts are the slowest team in the NFL, consistently the lowest over-unders, conservative game plans, good defense. The Bills are consistently the highest scoring team in the league, run at a fast pace. I'm going to guess we're going to see it somewhere between like 48 and 52, and I would take the over. So we'll see where that comes out here. I'm going to guess that it ends up Bills are a 6.5 point favorite and the over-under is like 50.5 or something like that. We'll see where that comes out when the numbers come out, but that's what I'm guessing. It's Bills by 6.5 and the over-under at like 50.5. And I think that the Bills can win, cover, and go over.
Yeah, you're the degenerate, not me, so I trust your knowledge of that.
Couple other people, Azor asking, what do you think of Jonathan Taylor? He's an explosive athlete. He's not necessarily, I don't know that he has phenomenal vision. That's been the issue for him. He doesn't always find the right hole, but if they open up a wide hole, and when you have guys like Braden Smith and Quentin Nelson, they open up some holes. So you can certainly see some of those things. And if he has an opening, he has elite speed for his size, like high-end speed for his size. He was a, state championship level sprinter while being 230 pounds. So he's a special athlete, even if he's not maybe a great, he's the anti-Devin Singletary.
Yeah, he's Singletary differential nightmare to me.
Yeah, Singletary is the ultimate bad athlete, but a great running back. Like, he sees vision, he has good contact balance, he has good short area quickness, but he's not a good athlete. Jonathan Taylor is not a good running back. He's just a phenomenal athlete that if you have a great offensive line, he can hit home runs in wide open holes. He's not going to create a ton or have great vision to find the right opening, but he's a great athlete that can make it work. So
it's going to be a big test, though, for the linebackers. I think we've seen them play really well here heading into the end of the stretch of the season for both Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano, but they still have the times where they open up a hole for the offense by biting them wrong, playing overly aggressive, getting stuck on blockers. This is going to be a big test for those guys, and a lot of the load's going to fall on them to maintain that run game. I'm confident in the DBs. I'm confident in a lot of what the defensive line's able to do. It's going to be pretty pressing on the linebacking core here this week.
Yeah, Justin asking, who do we like between the Titans and Ravens? That Titans defense is a problem. You just saw them give up that lead to Houston in a game they really needed. Baltimore is not a good matchup for them. They can put up a ton of points, and they have a better defense than Houston. If you press to it right now, I'm probably going to pick a Baltimore upset of Tennessee, and that Baltimore is going to move on to play the Chiefs.
I think that could look a lot. Yeah, I think that game could look a lot like that Cleveland game. Like, sure. I'm not sold on Baltimore, dude. I like Baltimore. I respect that franchise. I think they have good coaching. Lamar's a super weapon. Titans have a counterpunch, even though their defense stinks. They still have one of the guys that's playing better at quarterback than almost anyone. That doesn't get talked about enough. I think Ryan Tannehill's a really good quarterback. They have awesome talent. You saw them here with a tied game be able to just a 50-yard strike down the field with 10 seconds. Like, they have that counterpunch and that ability to make some big explosive plays. So I think for every punch the Ravens give them, this is going to be the first. Who have the Ravens beaten in this stretch of 5 games?
Yes, I will say the Bills' late season stretch is way more impressive opponent-wise, strength of schedule-wise than Baltimore. Jacksonville, Cincinnati.
Heck, Cleveland's and
the game against Cleveland, they gave up 42 points. The only good team they played in this stretch was Cleveland, and they gave up 42 points.
Yes, and that was a coin flip of a game.
Yeah, Cleveland should have won that game.
Yeah. Absolutely, Cleveland should have won that game. And that's what I'm saying is I like the Ravens, but I think the hype of the Ravens heading into the playoffs is a little bit exaggerated. It's good to win those games that you're supposed to, and the way they've done it is dominant. I'm not sold that they can do it against the team that can punch them back in the mouth every time they score. So I think this is going to be a good one, similar to that Cleveland game.
I like this. Once again, Frank Wright gets to be part of our Super Bowl run. I love it. I'm totally on board with that. Being able to go through, we'll get a couple last ones here. So, no, for anyone, okay, we'll run through this again real quick. The seeding, the Kansas City Chiefs are number 1. The Buffalo Bills are number 2. The Pittsburgh Steelers are number 3. The Tennessee Titans are number 4. Those are your top 4 seeds. So the Tennessee Titans, as the number 4 seed, will play the number 5 seed, Baltimore Ravens, in Tennessee. As the 3 seed, the Pittsburgh Steelers will host the number 6 seed, Cleveland Browns. The Buffalo Bills, as the 2 seed, will host the number 7 seed, Indianapolis Colts. And then the Chiefs have a bye in the first round. They will wait for, if all the favorites win, they will get the winner of Tennessee at Baltimore. As the number 1 seed, they get to play the lowest remaining seed. So the scenario where that would play out would be if Cleveland were to upset Pittsburgh, or if the Colts were to upset the Bills, they would go on to play Kansas City because they would play the lowest remaining seed. If Buffalo beats Indianapolis and Pittsburgh beats Cleveland, the Bills will host Pittsburgh in Buffalo the following week. So, again, Buffalo will host Indianapolis, Pittsburgh will host Cleveland, Tennessee will host Baltimore. Those will be our playoff games next weekend. We're just waiting tonight to be able to hear when that is.
All I heard was just win the ball game. That's it. And I can't wait.
It's going to be really fun to be able to go through. So you guys were awesome tonight. This was a ton of fun. We went longer than we normally do because there was so much fun to talk about all the records being broken, waiting for that Houston game. Thankfully, it didn't go into overtime. That was very nice of them to be able to figure that out.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, that was delightful. A.J. Brown's a special player. Being able to go through all that. Any final thoughts on this regular season or what we were able to experience these last couple games before we fully go into playoff mode?
Yeah, I've got a shirt that says "Just One Before I Die," and it's not the coolest shirt I own, but it's my favorite shirt that I own because It's so true. Having sat through that drought and sat through watching other teams have a Week 17 game where they're debating whether or not they're going to rest their starters because it's probably a meaningless game to some extent, and watching how playoffs shake out. Who are we going to get seeded against? Can we make a special run? All these things are all the things that I've ever wanted in my life as a Bills fan, and they've been so close so many times. And my wife was picking on me a little bit here today because I said, hey, you always make fun of me. You were making fun of me at the beginning of the season when I said this was a 12-win team. She's like, dude, you always say it's a 12-win team since I've known you. Well, that's not totally fair. But I think a lot of people are the same way I am, in that you've always hoped to have this team. And here we are. I couldn't have even imagined, even when I picked the 12-win team, I still kind of looked at that schedule and said, damn, this is the tough schedule. I don't know if they can be a 12-win team, but to be a 13-3 team and break all these records and super hot and beating teams by how much they're beating teams, just savor this. Like, we've been talking about this now for a month, to savor this team and the gloating that you can do and be proud of it. I tweeted it out or put it on Facebook where are the Patriots fans in my life? They're nowhere to be seen. And people are like, well, we don't have to talk about it all the time. I'm going to talk about it all the time because this is what I've waited for. I've seen you guys all have this success and be able to wear your championship hats and be able to order all the special things and hear the national media talk about you. Now I'm going to retweet it all and put it all out there because this is special. It doesn't come around for us. All that. I hope it is here for the next 10 years and I can act like I've been here before at some point, but I'm not there yet.
We haven't.
I'm going to enjoy it all every step of the way. I think this team can do something so special, and I'm so excited. I can't wait to dig in here this week with you, Greg, and talk about a playoff game that I think that we should win. That I didn't have that feeling going into the Texans game last year. I think they should win and have a whole month of football ahead of them.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And going through, you guys are so generous with this. We really, really appreciate it. All the things we've gone through here, and I hope you guys enjoy the content. The Aaron and I and all the rest of the guys on the Cover One Network. Go check out the guys on the Hoof podcast. Anthony's doing an awesome job in disguised coverage. Eric does the best film breakdowns in the business. His film room with Nate Geary is top notch as far as what they're breaking down, bringing on guys like Chris Trapasso and Bruce Nolan and people like that all the time to be able to talk through Buffalo Bills football. We're going to be here for you guys, bringing the best content we can to everybody all season long and through the rest of this run here. And you guys make it worthwhile in what we do. So everything that Aaron said, being able to go through and enjoy every second of this, find all the tweets to celebrate, go through and celebrate and retweet all the records being broken, and enjoy every single second of this, because we don't know how this is going to go. I can promise you the Bills are going to be good for a while here. They have the right pieces locked up for the right period of time. You don't know when these special seasons come along. 13-win seasons don't come along all that often. This kind of fantastic injury luck doesn't come along all this often. We're going to have to start paying more of our experienced rookie players coming up for extensions. That's going to make it harder to have the phenomenal depth that came through the 56-point butt whooping today on the Dolphins. Those things don't happen all the time, and being able to enjoy and savor these moments in these games and these unbelievable victories and these kind of streaks that we're going on is totally worth it. So if you guys enjoy what we do, my request for you guys is to wherever you're listening right now, just take a quick second to give us a rating or a review or a like or a share or whatever it might be. If you know other people in your life that are a Bills fan who's just been coming out of their shell and hadn't been fully on board for the past while, it's okay. Welcome them back and tell them to come listen to us and tell them to come check out the show that we have. Come on over to cover1.net, our premium membership. You can get in the Slack channel, be able to come have fun with us and enjoy these games. Everything that we have going on, I hope that you guys consider just being able to share a little bit more. This is all the work that we do, all the generosity we had in the chat tonight with those super chats. That goes a long ways to being able to give us the time and energy to be able to put into creating more content for you guys, and all the different resources and tools that we use to produce that content gets paid for from donations and contributions like that. So I just want to say thank you and to just kind of keep it rolling.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, guys, for our friends over at Uncle Jumbo's at West Her, for everyone here, everyone at Cover One, on behalf of Aaron Quinn and Greg Tompsett, you have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.